The things that we do at DeepMind never fail to amaze me. What do we want this company's culture to be like? Like, how do we want people to feel? I think I got thrown on against like Northern Ireland, which is one of the weakest teams, for a quarter, and I honestly felt like Bambi on ice.
Sammy, you are an expert in human resources, where you are the people and culture lead at DeepMind, one of the leading artificial intelligence companies in the world, which was acquired by Google in 2014. Prior to this, you achieved 3 A's in German, Geography and Economics at A-level and attended the University of Bath, where you read international management with German before joining BMW Group on their graduate scheme, where you spent 5 years in total. This involved placements in China and Germany. You then moved to CarWow, the car buying platform, and then on to DeepMind. Not only this, you have succeeded hugely in the sport of netball, having represented the England national team at a variety of levels, including England under-17, you captained the under-19 team, and you've played for the under-21 national netball team, as well as winning 3 Super League championships with Team Bath. We were at school together. We've been friends for many years. I actually have the utmost respect for you, so welcome to Careers Badger.
Thanks, James. That's a long time ago now, all of that.
I know it is, but you are at DeepMind now and you're the HR specialist. So I think what we'll do is we'll crack straight into the question of, could you please explain what HR actually is, human resources, and what does your job involve?
Yeah. I'll do my best. It's quite confusing. I think a lot of people don't know exactly what HR means, and that's because at different companies it means really different things. So if you take when I was at BMW, it literally meant human resource management. So making sure we had enough people on the shifts to be able to build the cars. When I was at the mini plant in Oxford, it was also thinking about our future human resource talent. So apprentice schemes, making sure that we had good apprentice schemes in place, and that we were attracting like diverse people to do those apprentice schemes. And then when I moved to CarWow, so CarWow was a startup and was 50 people. So HR there for me meant thinking about what do we want this company's culture to be like? Like, how do we want people to feel? How are we going to attract people to come and work here? Because no one knew who CarWow was, so it was really important to reward people right, treat people right, and then keep people. That was the most important thing. So how did we make sure that people could keep learning and growing and developing and feeling like they were making progress in their own careers? And at DeepMind, it's still similar to that. So we call ourselves people and culture rather than human resources. And we think about people, we think about culture. So that could be working on organizational wide projects on culture, or working with managers to help them to make sure that people have the best experience they can at DeepMind. And I guess that's a little bit like, well, if we work closely with managers, it's a little bit like if you have a fantastic geography teacher, people will enjoy geography more. So if managers are brilliant, a lot of people experience the organisation through their manager. And so if they do a fantastic job, then people will enjoy working at DeepMind more and will stay at DeepMind for longer.
Fine. So culture very much is just how people feel when they're in the organisation. Is that essentially what it means?
Culture I normally describe as the way how things are done around here. So the way things are done, and how things are done has an impact on how people feel. So if you were rewarded for every good piece of work you did, if you got promotions when you deserved them, if your well-being was looked after, if your teammates were great, then that impacts the culture and that impacts how you feel.
And I guess from a business perspective, you want to retain the best talent, right? You to enable DeepMind or whatever the organization is to progress and be competitive and be at the cutting edge. You want the best talent there.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then traditionally, if I think of HR, I think about things like hiring people and actually maybe if someone's not performing, maybe trying to help them perform at their best. Is that an element of the HR role as well?
Yeah. So hiring and firing is something that a lot of people put under the HR banner. Yes, very much so. So that can be supporting people to help them to do their job well, and whether that's through training, whether that's through like one-to-one development plans. We typically work with the manager on those. on those development plans.
Sure.
Or it could be helping people to understand what their strengths are and make sure they're in the right job. Like a lot of times people might not be doing very well in one particular job, but they're fantastic at a different job.
We've got to breach it. You work for, personally, I think, one of the coolest companies that exists at the moment. And, you know, one of the things I've read sort of maybe last year was this whole using your AI algorithms to go through stacks and stacks of retina scans so that your algorithms can actually detect like glaucoma and eye diseases. You know, there's obviously a human supply issue with the amount of people and the sheer amount of imagery that doctors have to look through, but the company is providing a solution to doing that. Can you just tell us more about DeepMind and some other projects that our guests can know about?
Sure. So at DeepMind, our mission is to solve intelligence and use it to solve everything else. So we're a research organisation. So we spend our time thinking about fundamental research problems rather than, we spend less of our time on the applications of that artificial intelligence. So one of the really cool things that DeepMind are working on at the moment is something called, we call it AlphaFold. You can read all about it on the DeepMind website. And it's predicting protein structures. So it's using algorithms and technology to predict protein structures in the human body. And for example, diseases like Parkinson's and other genetic diseases are where the proteins haven't folded in the right way. And so by predicting protein structures more effectively, they could diagnose more effectively these diseases in people and then help to treat these diseases more effectively.
Talk us through your typical day so we can get a flavour of what you do.
Yeah, so every day is different, as I'm sure it is in many jobs. But on a typical day, if I take like last week, for example, I might have interviewed somebody in the morning. Someone from my team, the people and culture team, interviews every potential candidate for DeepMind. It's called a mission and values alignment interview. So the most important thing when hiring somebody at DeepMind is that they believe in our mission and really want to achieve our mission. And so it's making sure that people are really aligned to our mission, really believe that solving artificial intelligence is possible, and they want to help in any way that they can to achieve that. Yeah, and then I might have there's typically some sort of like project meeting. So at the moment we have a lot of COVID-19 work going on. So we're helping people to work from home because everybody at the moment is working from home, not in the offices. So that might be basically coming up with content to help people work from home effectively, and also working with managers to help them to think about ways in which they can bring their team together, because we're not seeing each other. It's a really weird time. I then might have, I have a team of 5 people, so I might have a one-to-one with one of my team members to help brainstorm some of the challenges that they've got going on at the moment, or like talk about their development.
Can you just tell us what you like most about HR and the work that you do, please?
Yeah, so I kind of fell into HR, to be honest with you, and I am understanding more and more why I fell into HR. So the things that I enjoy in my job are things that I've enjoyed from school, from playing sport, from university, and I still enjoy as part of my job. So that is, I'm fascinated by how do you make teams work effectively? So how can you bring a group of people together and help them to work effectively as a team? I love working with managers who are essentially like coaches of a team to help them to get the most out of that team. I love at DeepMind in particular, like being part of something much bigger, of being part of something that could change the world as we know it for the good.
Is there anything that you'd wish you'd known before joining HR, or or embarking on a career in HR? Perhaps difficult things that you didn't expect. Anything along that nature?
Yes. So some parts of HR involve a lot of work with policies and process. Okay. And I'm really not a big fan of policy and process at all, which probably doesn't make me a great candidate for a HR role. So that's one thing. There was also a year I spent just after my grad scheme, and the HR director at the time recommended that I go into this role. He said, you need to spend a year basically doing disciplinary investigations, grievances, which is like managing complaints, managing absence, all these different things that I had absolutely no desire to do. And he said, you need to spend a year doing this, because these will be some of the hardest conversations you'll ever have with normal people, and building up those skills will serve you to be a great HR professional in the future. And I never knew that I'd have to do that going into HR. And actually, now I don't regret it for a second. Like, it really did help me to become the HR leader that I am now.
Well, can we talk about salaries in HR? What's your like typical starting salary, and then what can you potentially go on to earn as you become more established and build more experience?
So if you've been to university, probably the easiest way into, maybe not the easiest way, but a very common way into HR is by doing a graduate scheme. And graduate schemes probably nowadays, it was a little bit less when I first started, but nowadays probably pay between 25 and 35k to do a HR graduate scheme. And they're typically at bigger organisations. At smaller organisations, you'll earn less. And then as you become more senior, so HR directors at medium to large organisations will be on six-figure salaries. Senior HR BPs, we call them, so senior HR business partners, or will probably be on six figures as well at medium to large organisations. Okay,
superb. And then common routes into HR. Do you need to take any degree in particular, or can you just talk us through that one? Routes to getting into it, getting on the grad schemes. Talk us through that one if you could.
So to do a HR graduate scheme, some companies will ask for you to have done something called a CIPD, which is a HR accreditation. Not all graduate schemes will, mine didn't. I did my master's in human resource management later, so once I've been working for 3 years, and that gave me my CIPD, which is Chartered Institute for Personnel Development. And so routes into HR, I think you can pretty much have studied anything, to be honest, at university. It's then about showing that you have a real passion for that profession and for people in general, people and ways of working.
We've now got to move on to your story, and you touched on it earlier. I'm interested because I don't think I knew what HR existed until I started my first job. Say again.
I didn't either. I had no idea.
I know, this is why we need to get the message out there. And I want to know, was HR always the plan? Presumably it wasn't. How did you get into it? Talk us through that story, please.
HR was definitely not always the plan. And my first experience, so I at university did a sandwich degree. So I did 2 years at university, spent a year abroad in Munich, where I worked for a year. And that was my first experience of HR. And my experience of HR there were the people that paid you, sorted out your taxes, and where you booked your holiday. And then I did another year at university, and then I went on to work in HR. Would I have chosen to work in HR? Absolutely not. So how I ended up working in HR was I studied German and international management, and I loved German. And I spent a year abroad, like I said, at university in Munich, and I really wanted to go back to Germany again. I saw that BMW was doing a graduate scheme. So I applied for the graduate scheme, and I think at that time it was in something like procurement, which means basically buying at an organisation. I didn't really know what that meant. I just knew that one was the grad scheme. And a manager at the assessment centre, took me to one side and said, I really think that you'd enjoy the human resource graduate scheme. And I was like, no, because I thought it was all about booking holidays, payroll and taxes. And he said, do you know what HR even means? And I was like, no. And so he explained to me some of the things that I could do on the graduate scheme. So he talked about human resource marketing, which is basically like, how do you advertise your roles effectively to candidates so that they want to come and join your company. He talked about doing like shift planning. He talked about doing some recruitment. He talked about doing work with young people. And I was like, oh, okay, actually that sounds fine. And I probably thought, to be honest with you, that at the end of my grad scheme I could just leave and go into a different team or department, and then never looked back since.
It's amazing how it really does just pays homage to the idea that you just need to get out there and do something, and then, you know, if you're not sure, that it's best just to start somewhere, and then your pathway can sort of develop in front of you as you progress, right? Yeah,
I think that as long as you work out pretty early on what you enjoy and lean in more to what you enjoy, then everything will be fine. Like, I love German, lent into that, and then ended up doing parts of HR that I really enjoyed and didn't do parts of HR that I didn't enjoy.
Sure. And do you think that philosophy was what led you to your A-level choices as well, just going for what you enjoyed?
Definitely.
How have extracurricular pursuits impacted your life? And I presume sport obviously has played a big role for you. So can you just talk us through how extracurricular pursuits have impacted you?
Gosh, yeah. So at school, I was doing England 17, England 19 netball. So what that meant was I was training probably 3 times a week after school, and a couple of times a week before school, and then I'd have matches at the weekend. So what that meant in reality was I was doing a lot of my homework in car journeys when my dad was driving me to and from training. So I had to learn pretty on just to like get on with things, I guess. Like,
sure.
I didn't have a choice to do it at any other time, so I just had to do it whenever I could, basically. So that was what it was like at school. At university, I was then in the under-21 program, and so we were training 2 or 3 times a day, and at the weekend we'd have 1 or 2 games at the weekend. And so I learned pretty quickly to manage my time really, really well. I remember sitting down with one of my coaches at university and saying, because I had a degree that had quite a lot of face time, so you got marks for your degree by speaking German in class, so I couldn't just miss a German lecture, for example, to do training. And I remember speaking to her about I can't fit all my training in, and she sat down with me with my timetable and basically found 3 extra hours that I could do my training, and these hours were like 5:30 till 6:30 in the morning, or 9:30 till 10:30 at night. And I was like, excellent, okay, fine.
Yeah.
So I learned pretty early on that anything is possible as long as you put your mind to it and are quite focused on what you want to achieve.
Can I just ask you quickly about your how old were you when you were first like scouted for netball? Talk us through, like, because you like your first representation for England. Just talk us through that experience. Quick, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I was first scouted when I was 14. And I'll be honest, like, I don't think I was probably a very talented netball player. Like, I think I was just very tall and lanky on a netball team. And they were like,
I don't believe it, Sam.
It's very true. And I think they were pretty much like, yeah, she might grow into something, we'll take a risk on her. And then the truth is I went to one training camp, which was brutal. I was there with, like, a lot of the girls were a lot older than I was. And they asked us to do all of these different tests. And they'd then benchmark us, and then we had another training camp in 8 weeks' time, and they'd then benchmark us again to see how hard we'd worked in between and how far we'd progressed. And I flunked everything first time round, so I was probably the first to drop out the bleep test. I really wasn't very strong on, so we had to do like med ball pushes against the wall. I really wasn't very good at all, but then I worked really hard in between, so I had a program and would train whenever I could, basically, to get better. And second time round, I was way better than I was first time round. Still not anywhere near as good as a lot of the players that were there. But I think the coaches saw that I'd worked hard and progressed. And I was also very lucky because I happened to play quite well with a player, Stacey Francis, who's now in the England netball team. And I think the coaches at that time were like, oh, they play together all right. And so I think she probably got me my first selection, to be honest.
Thank you, Stacey. No, I'm sure you're being very modest here, Sam. And then I really like that. And then, can you remember when you first went on to court for like the England under-17 team, and how did you get on in that game?
Yeah, so the first year So I got into the under-17 team first time around. So I just turned 15, I think. So I was quite young. So I this isn't me being modest. Like I really was like, you take 4 defenders, and I really was 4th choice defender. And so I think I got like, we played a European Championship, and I think I got thrown on against like Northern Ireland, which is one of the weakest teams, for a quarter, and I honestly felt like Bambi on ice. Like everything just felt really, I felt really starry-eyed. I felt like I didn't have a clue what to do. But it was amazing. Like it was great to have like a crowd there, my family there. And I don't think I was a great netball player that year, but the year after I was older in the squad, and I was vice captain the second year because I'd had the experience of the first year, played every single game the second year. And that was when it started meaning something, when I could feel like I could contribute to the team, not just being the kind of 4th defender in a squad.
It's amazing, isn't it? You know, this whole, you always feel that there's a ridiculous pressure on you to perform immediately in a pursuit of any kind, and you realize that you've got to build that toolbox, and you've got to build that experience, and then as you say, you start to enjoy it once you sort of understand the lay of the land a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
And Sammy, are there any other tips that netball's taught you about life?
I think being humble and having no ego. So if your ego drives your decisions, then you'll actually always end up letting yourself down, I think. Whereas if you follow something that you're really passionate about, or something that you really believe in, so your purpose, so if it was teaching, for example, then that's something that you'll be really passionate about and you'll do well in. So for me, working for DeepMind or working with, thinking about people and culture is something I'm really passionate about, and I can leave my ego at the door and I can follow my passion. And one of the, like, I learned it through my time playing netball. There's a real example that stands out to me, which is I had this incredible coach who coached New Zealand for a number of years, and then coached in England. She was called Lynn Gunson, and she took the England U21 team on a tour to South Africa. And in netball, there are 7 different positions, and only 2 people can shoot. And our shooter missed 6 shots on the trot. And there's a position in netball called centre, which basically runs up and down the whole length of the court the whole time, giving the shooters the ball. And she just, midway through a game against South Africa, switched the shooter with the centre, and was like, now you can have a feel of what it feels like when your shooter misses 6 shots on the trot, and made the shooter run up and down the court, basically, as centre. And that meant that we probably weren't going to win the game because we had our players in the wrong position. And it just showed the shooter that it wasn't all about her, and she had to feel what it felt like in other people's positions, and understand like how she was contributing or not contributing to the team.
Wow.
And the shooter, you've got to imagine, a shooter's like a 6'3" player. Centre's normally like 5'8". They're very different levels of like endurance, fitness as well. So the shooter was sweating buckets, absolutely exhausted, running up and down the netball court. But it wasn't about her and her ego. It was about doing what's right for the team and understanding your impact on the team.
Really good. And then does this, I mean, I'm getting real trends here. This mindset and the skills you've developed must then sort of translate a bit into your role now. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. My like weird fascination with team dynamics definitely came from squads. Like I had lots of different netball squads over the time that I played netball, and the people and personalities that you have in those squads impact how you show up as a team and how you actually compete as a team, and how much you trust players that you play with impacts how well you do as a team. How focused everybody is on the goal that you want to achieve affects how you perform as a team. So those things have definitely translated through.
I think I've got to ask, career highlights can be from your professional career, personal career. Talk us through your best memories to date, because there will be lots to come in the future, I'm sure.
Gosh, personal and professional. There's loads of like netball highlights throughout the time. Professional highlights, a lot of my professional highlights are actually when I was at Carwow, and the reason I was there was because we were building the reason why the highlights are from there is because we were building something from scratch.
Sure.
So a highlight was in the second year I was at Carwow, we applied for Times Top 100 Best Companies. So we entered that competition and we came 7th in the country for best companies to work for. Another highlight is we and so at a startup, people are work crazy hours. It's quite a lot of startups can be quite like a macho culture of working really, really, really hard and never stopping.
Sure.
And part of my job was to get people to think about their well-being and their mental health. So we did on World Mental Health Day, I ran a workshop for everyone in the organisation to get everybody talking about their experiences with their own mental health and what they do to make sure that they have the best mental health they can have, and getting everybody to open up in front of each other was just amazing. And it doesn't sound like the biggest deal, but there were people you wouldn't expect sharing some of their sad experiences and some of their tools and techniques. That was very, very cool. And then at DeepMind, when we anything that the things that we do at DeepMind never fail to amaze me. And because we hire people that really care about the mission, and you feel like everything you do on a day-to-day basis has a real impact on our mission, anything that we launch that's something brand new, such as this protein folding, such as the Moorfield Eye Hospital work that you were talking about, I feel really proud of the work that we're doing at DeepMind. Brilliant.
And we've got to go there. Have you talk to us about failures, any bad experiences, and how you ultimately got through them, and anything sticking out for you there? It's always a tough question, this.
So there's personal and professional. Professional, I've talked about. I was on this 4-year program for under-21s, and on paper we were probably meant to. We were probably meant to get silver or bronze at the very, very least.
You're talking netball here, right? You're talking netball. Yeah.
And we went to World Championships having worked for 4 years for this, and we lost our semi-final game. And it was against Australia, who eventually went on to win gold, so that was okay.
So a world's like every 4 years?
Yeah.
So you got a huge lead-up time, and you were going to maybe come predicted to win or come second or something, right?
Second was probably where we were predicted to come, because Australia were very strong that year.
Sure.
So we lost the semi-final to Australia. And then we went into the bronze medal match, and we lost the bronze medal match by 2 to Jamaica, which was horrendous. Honestly, it was the worst feeling ever. And what made it even worse for me personally is, so you get, a lot of people don't talk about this. So at big competitions, there's drugs testing. And so we'd lost this game, and all I wanted to do was go and have a hug from my mum and my dad, to be honest with you, in the stands. And the drugs testers showed up, and they pick your name out at random, and they picked my name out. So I then got whisked off with the drugs testers, which means they basically follow you around until you can produce a sample for them. And so they basically followed me around for the next hour and a half, and I had to be away from the squad and away from my family with these drugs testers, which was just the worst.
Yeah. So you couldn't let go of those emotions because you had some person just chaperoning you around the place.
Exactly. You couldn't go and spend time with your family. And then straight after World Champs, I flew straight out to Germany for my 3rd year placement that I did at university. So I didn't play netball for a whole year because Germany don't play netball. So how did I deal with failure? At the time, it was basically got completely distracted with different life in Munich, which was the best and the worst thing. The best thing because I probably needed a break. I needed to do something different. The worst thing because I'd been training 3 times a day, every day a week, and then I went to Germany and drank a lot of beer and ate a lot of German sausage and got really fat. And came back after a year in Germany and was had to train pretty hard to get back into shape.
Fair enough. I can understand that, right? But just tell me, so let's back it up to that, up at the World Championships, and what was team morale like going into it, and then just talk us through those team dynamics when things started to come apart. Can you talk us through that? Was there any key learnings you took away from that experience?
I think, God, it's hard, isn't it? With with the will of hindsight, like everything is easier in hindsight. But I think we'd gone into the semi-final really thinking we could win that match, and so when we'd lost the semi-final, everyone was quite down after that match, and then the next day you play the bronze medal match, so you don't have much time in between. And gosh, yeah, you could unpick some of the passes that went astray, some of the shots that didn't go in, some of the turnovers that we didn't make. We were actually exhausted as a squad. Like, looking back, I think we actually trained too hard in the run-up to World Champs. We were actually quite tired by that final game. And so one thing that's taught me is the importance of doing things other than just the thing you're focusing on. Exactly. So how important it is to have balance, and that's actually something that has come with me into my work now. How important it is to see your family, see your friends, spend time doing other things. That's probably the biggest thing that I've learned from that. And also, like, that defeat is something that drives me in a lot of other things. I think if I just worked a little bit harder or trained, pushed myself a little bit more in the game, maybe things would have been different.
Sure.
So now when I'm going into different challenges, that's a big driver for me, a big push for me.
Really good advice. You are on the inside of the hiring process at a firm where many, many people presumably want to work. I just wondered whether, now I've got you on the line, if you can give some tips and advice to applicants for companies like DeepMind, for the Googles, for Facebooks, and other companies, like any tips that they can apply to their applications, or things that they should be doing now to help them.
Yeah, so I've mentioned that mission alignment is really important for us. So, like, being really interested and really wanting to achieve that mission. So doing loads of research into the company and making sure that you do really want to work there, like, is really important. It sounds obvious, but it is really important. At DeepMind, we hire people from all sorts of different backgrounds and different expertise, but learning, having a growth mindset is really important. So if you can show, it could be that you show on your CV that you've done a bachelor degree, a master's degree, a PhD, but you can also show that you've done volunteering in different organisations. You've helped to set up some small charity or contributed to some charity work, or you've started teaching yourself French or Italian. Like, having a learning mindset and wanting to push yourself in these different pursuits is really important. So that's something that I look for on the CV. I think it's also there's something about being, especially this is for DeepMind in particular, being quite humble and knowing that you're contributing to something, and it's not all about you, because we have so many smart minds. It's about knowing that yes, you can contribute something fantastic, but also you're going to work as part of a team. That's really important. But I stand by saying, do what you really, really enjoy, because if you start doing something that you don't enjoy as much, you won't talk as passionately about it. You won't, when times get hard, you probably won't be able to keep digging in and doing it to the best of your ability.
Yeah. I think final advice for, let's take, 16 to 18 year olds, 14 to 18 year olds at that stage in their lives. What would be your advice to them?
I'm probably gonna get in trouble for saying this, but don't worry too much, I guess, is the key thing. I worked really hard at school, and it was really important to me to get good grades, and that is important. Like, working hard is important, but don't worry too much if you don't know what you want to do.
Sure.
My personal advice is to follow what you enjoy, and then you will end up in a career or a profession that you really enjoy. But don't worry too much if you haven't woken up one morning and realised that you want to be a vet or an aeronaut or anything like that. An astronaut, I mean to say, not
aeronaut. It's like a 1920s pioneer of aviation. I will take that. Oh, Sammy, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you and getting your insights into a career in HR and hearing about your story. So thanks so much for sharing that with us.
No, likewise, James. Thanks for doing this for everyone.
No, thank you very much, Sam. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.